Welcome to the epicenter of sports and entertainment. This is The Rude Dog Show. Now, here's your host, Rudy Reyes.
Welcome to the Rude Dog Show, everybody. Good afternoon. Happy Monday to you. You may know the guy above me, or depends on what device you're actually looking at. Welcome to the show, Chase Griffin. Chase, thanks for coming on the show. I certainly appreciate it, and happy Monday to you.
Happy Monday. Thanks for having me, Rudy.
Yeah, not a problem at all. Thanks for taking your time out as well. I wanted to kind of straight off get into the college sports NIL. I know that's been announced, and I recognize that players across the landscape are maybe shaking their head as in maybe that's not enough money, or maybe they're nodding their head and saying, okay, well, I'm good with this. You know, $600 goes a long way, especially when you're talking about 134 FBS schools traveling across the country. And I don't know if that's per appearance. I don't know if that goes to each time they're out on the field. I'm not quite sure how those numbers are tallied up. But hey, if someone's going to give me $600 to do what I do, what I love every single day, the football season, then I guess $600 will do. And I'll put that in my bank instead of throwing it away to someone else. I'll keep it. Whereas years prior, the NCAA has kind of missed the boat on this. And now that NIL is probably the largest it's ever been, you tell me from your perspective, is this a good thing for student athletes, or could this actually bring on more of a negative connotation to what they're trying to accomplish in the long term?
Well, for college athletes, I can't be one to decide another athlete's decision. I can really only speak for myself. If they saw that deal and read through the contract and hopefully had experts sort of conveying to them what that contract meant, and they said, yes, this is something I want to sign and go forward with, I can't fault them. For myself, I declined that option just because I didn't like that there were no royalties and that it was a flat fee for athletes. I feel like there are other entities that are involved in making sure the game happens, both in the talent side and in the production side, and they've been offered royalties in their contracts. And I think it goes in the same line of thinking that has been keeping college athletes from revenue share for a long time in the real college sports landscape.
Well, I think overall, I don't know what their logic is in regards to not giving some athletes royalties where others receive the royalties. I'm not quite sure how that works. Of course, those are powers that are beyond my imagination in relation to who specifically makes those decisions. But I know that if you're going to do it for one player, you should do it for all student athletes across the board. That this should not be about a favoritism component. Maybe it has something to do with scheduling and maybe some of the competition they face on the other side of the ball, you know, in the upcoming season and so on. I see there could be some magnanimous kind of a give and take as the season goes on to see how this will actually work. And once it unfolds in a positive light, do you think that they'll make some alterations to this to where it will reflect royalties for players across the board in the future?
I hope so. I think anytime there's something new, this is the first time this game has been available during the NIL era. And hopefully as time goes on, athletes will continue demanding better terms in the contracts, and EA and the NCAA will continue on their progression, which has been a little bit behind public sentiment and what's been in the court system, to the point where the contracts look like they should.
Well, you know, what's really beneficial for the colleges is that they're generating substantial amounts of revenue for ticket sales, merchandise, sponsorships, broadcast rights through whether it's CBS or albeit Fox and whoever else is involved in that process. For example, last year, the University of Michigan, this is before the national championship and them winning that with, you know, JJ McCarthy and that whole 9 yards. And they produced obviously one of the largest powerhouse teams in the FBS, $210 million in total revenue. That's an insane amount of money. So to me, if you're going to incorporate $210 million into the system, which is fluid money, why not pay royalties to those students? Whereas a smaller FBS school, maybe a Jackson State, as a good example, I interviewed a couple of guys from there in the past. They may not see that kind of royalty because their revenue stream based on their strength of schedule, based on who they face, and so on. I'm sure there are tons of exceptions. I'm not going to go to all the minutia, but when it comes to what that looks like, maybe not quite $210 million for the University of Michigan. Maybe that can go to USC, maybe UCLA. I know a lot of them are migrating out of the former, what we know as the Pac-12, where the UCLA is obviously a part of, and going over to the Big 12. What does that look like moving forward for the LA schools? And when it comes to moving over to a larger powerhouse, would you consider, if they revise this during the season, let's say, or maybe at the very beginning of the season, or maybe for the following season, would you consider not only signing up for royalty money, but would you maybe adapt that to giving that extra amount of money to causes that you believe in, or that you propagate for, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you sort of take your question, take a step back, there's sort of two ways that college athletes, I think, are going to be paid in the nearby future. We're already paid through NIL, and eventually it will be pay for play, rev share. And the majority of that rev share money will come from the media revenue deals. So I think what you'll see in payment breakdown is it'll be by conference, because every single school in the Big Ten, for example, is paid out the same way from the media revenue deals. A piece of that at each school will go to the students equally. Now, those payout structures are still being determined, but I think for revenue generating sports, there's probably going to be pretty much equality amongst all the schools in a certain conference. NIL, I think, is where things get more individualized. NIL is based off the value that you personally can create. So there's going to be athletes who are able to become great brand ambassadors, folks who are able to continue what they're doing as far as working with brands, consulting, etc. And then on top of that, the athletes who are playing well on the field, when there's opportunities like EA Sports, I think should be paid accordingly to the value that they help create for that game. I think any college athlete provides a certain value to that video game, just because if you're a fan at a smaller school and you want to play with the player on that team, then they are bringing value to the game. So there's not an athlete that doesn't really provide value because they're at a smaller school. I think what you'll see is if there's a base fee that colleges and college athletes can negotiate based off the value that they create for the game. On the rev share side, I think it'll be a little bit more equal based on what conference you're in.
Right. Or, you know what, to be honest with you, that particular player, and to your point, a particular player who's maybe top 5 wide receiver, and we could take any example that you would want. And those are the guys that are fighting through even thicker muck, especially when they're in a smaller division within the NCAA, right? Because they're going to be fighting against everyone else for the NIL money to say, well, even though the school's not that big, I'm playing bigger than the actual school is. So now you can peel that back kind of like an onion and say, well, what does that look like on the next leaf? Well, this guy has, an astronomical amount of yards after the catch. He has so many touchdowns, and he's being used as kind of like the jackknife, in different third down situations or whatnot. He's playing bigger than his school. Do you believe that based on his individual play, based on the NIL, not in the NCAA format, but the NIL format, that he should be getting paid more money for his image and likeness and name, whereas someone who's in a larger system may not be as dynamic, may not be as well known or well spoken about, or in whatever capacity that is? Should there be some type of even ground to this, or does that player still and should be paid that astronomical? I'm not going to say astronomical because student athletes never get paid astronomical amounts of money, and now the NIL is. That's kind of changing things a little bit, not too much, but a little bit. enough to make a difference? I don't know. We'll have to see what this season unfolds as we head into the 2024 NCAA football season, which is the largest out of all the NCAA systems out there as far as sports and badminton and things of that nature. But should that player play continually better than the school, regardless of how small that school is within that part of the conference?
Well, I think you're getting at the power of negotiation, and college athletes should have the chance to negotiate these contracts. Like I said earlier, if there's college athletes who look at the $600 flat fee and think that is the value that they create for EA Sports and they're fine with capturing on that, then fine. But for athletes who don't feel like that, they either have to feel comfortable walking away, or they should have the opportunity to negotiate directly with EA Sports and say, this is what I need. If it's going to be a flat fee, cool. I think regardless, college athletes, as a sign of the times, should be one of the groups that gets a royalty from the game. You see other entities like the schools, like the announcers who are capturing on royalties from the game. College athletes are literally the playable ones in the game. So they should be capturing on royalties. And I think that's sort of reflected in some of the changes that are happening in real life in the actual college economic landscape.
Well, when you talk about economics and how this has changed the mindset of student athletes, right? Because we see the big Power 10, the Power 5, whatever you want to call it, they weren't maybe recruiting as many high school guys, right? We see head coaches like former Hall of Fame, great Deion Sanders from Colorado. He makes shifts. He comes over from small Jackson State University as an example. I keep using an example because he did wonderful things when he was there. But now he brought that to Colorado. They didn't have the kind of season they were looking for, but they still carried that kind of swag. I remember there was one specific game where they were playing against a really, really good opponent, and they just got smashed. I mean, there's no coming back. You cannot come back from that. There is no, let's reschedule the game. Once you get smashed, you're smashed, and that's it. But when it comes to Deion Sanders and his regime, if you will, there in Colorado, should that be looked at as well and say, well, it isn't fair to other coaches who don't have the swag, who don't have the NFL experience, if you will, I hate to use that as a cliche, but who doesn't understand the overall landscape, to suggest that maybe these players who are, again, could be playing bigger than their respective university, and of course they get a copy of the EA Sports game and all that good stuff. Should they be getting, maybe, I don't want to say penalized because that's probably the wrong choice of words, but should that be looked at with more scrutiny?
Well, I'm not sure how many coaches, if any, are going to be involved in this game, but I think if they do involve coaches, based off of how the industry is already set up, coaches will have a better chance than players currently to negotiate for the deals that they're worth. And I think the same affordability should be there for players.
I do as well. I think that when you look at, the reports and rumors behind the NIL have been kind of an ongoing conversation, not super hot to trot, not the number one list. And of course you have coaches like the former great Nick Saban, who said basically that NIL shouldn't even exist. It shouldn't even happen. It doesn't create enough parity to include the NIL. And to be honest with you, I'm neutral in this, only because I don't have a vested interest in players making money or don't make money for that matter. What I would suggest to college athletes, student athletes more specifically, is that they avoid the gambling component of what sports brings, right? Because that's now bigger than anything else. Maybe not as big as the NIL for those students that are currently playing in it. And I don't even gamble. I mean, I don't even go to the store to buy a lottery ticket. But could this be considered like buying a lottery ticket if you're a student athlete that's looking for a lot more stability from the program that they're playing for than just scratching a lottery ticket for success?
I think those are sort of two different worlds. I would look at EA sort of as an NIL deal. I think right now, from my point of view, it's an incomplete NIL deal and not one that I would sign. And I think a contract that a lot of athletes with good representation will be hesitant about, at least. I think there's a lot of work to be done. It's pretty telling that EA Sports and the NCAA were two of the entities that were sued in the first place to even make all of this possible. So shout out Ed O'Bannon and his fight against these entities in the beginning. And I think they're both not as far along as they should be a decade later.
Well, they've had more than enough time. They've had more than ample time to prepare for what we're looking at now as a landscape that will forever be changed because of NIL. Now, again, I have no dog in the fight. I have no vested interest in it other than the fact alone that having NIL as a part of a compensatory component of playing college sports 3 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe even 7 years ago, it was against NCAA rules. It was a violation. If you were caught doing it, you were not only slapped on the hand, but you were fined as a school entity. You could be fined as an actual head coach. There was a lot of moving parts to that. And I think NIL kind of simplifies it and takes the power of what would otherwise be a violation and now turning it into something completely different. And again, without it really evolving, of course, progress would dictate that it's going to be as good as what gambling is to the sports industry, right? When we look at it from a comparative point of view, I think gambling, because it's still illegal in sports and coaches can't do any of that, and it's kind of a naughty in the NFL included, and maybe even golf. I don't know, but I do know that when you look at the overall totality of what the NCAA is doing, it's moving at a snail's pace. I mean, they make so much money during the March Madness for basketball. It's insane. Now, I don't know if the NIL will kind of mitigate over to college basketball, maybe in the future. I guess that really depends on what it looks like for college football in the season. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think as far as overall NIL, college basketball has been extremely successful, both on the men's and women's side. And you see even some Olympic sports have had folks who've excelled in their ability to create value through brand partnerships and collective deals. When it comes to EA Sports games, I think this is probably a test run. I think this contract's very conservative. But at the end of the day, college athletes are signing up for the game. And my advice to college athletes, from my perspective, would be just make sure you're getting expertise on what that $600 fee means. The fact that there are no royalties in the contract, where that sort of settles us in the hierarchy of importance to the game as far as from EA Sports and the NCAA's perspective, and just making sure that you're in the educated space where you can truly advocate for yourself next time.
Very much so. I'll be honest with you. I've interviewed a lot of players, and none of them have the acumen that you possess when it comes to speaking, not only from the NIL standpoint, but being a college athlete, as well as starting quarterback for UCLA team. I'm from Southern California. My family went to USC. Most people are like, boo, boo. But to be honest with you, when I look at the upcoming season for the UCLA Bruins, kind of shifting gears over to what football looks like for you specifically, as now you're headed into your senior season, what does that look like for you, not only as a player, but when you take a step back, what does it look like for you after football? Will you continue your football regimen and maybe get into the NFL, or would you rather take more of a business approach, utilize the platform that you currently have in order to further educate those players from various things, from staying away from things that are of a negative atonement off the field, staying away from gambling, being able to educate yourself from a financial standpoint once you do take that leap into the NFL? What does that look like for you moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, when I was 8 years old, I remember telling my father I wanted to win a Super Bowl. And that dream is still there. It's still available. And until God says that door is all the way closed, I'm continue using my talents and using my skills and habits to put myself in the best position to do that. Whether that's the case or not, there's other things I'm involved in. Athlete advocacy is obviously something that's near and dear to my heart. But through NIL, I think part of the reason why I'm able to speak well about this, I appreciate that encouragement, is that I've had the opportunity to actually work and consult and create value for brands and capture off that value and learn financial literacy through partnerships like JP Morgan Chase. I'm also a fellow at the UC Investment Office where I learned how to institutional invest, and I've been able to consult in the marketing space on the agency side, and I produce music. So there's a lot of things outside of football that I think help give me scale on what the entertainment industry, as far as college athletics, can look like and should look like according to other standards that have already been established as successful. And I think until college athletes get to the point where we're continually respected in the same way, deals like EA Sports just offered us will be continued to be offered. And I think the more that athletes understand and are educated and are given expertise on what these contracts mean, we'll be better experienced once we get out of our college careers, and we'll know how to demand what we're truly worth in these contracts going forward.
The NFL, and clearly I can't speak to what they do or don't do. I know the NFLPA does a lot of great things for players who have currently retired, or maybe those that are maybe newly retired, rather, for lack of a better term, getting into that kind of space. Meaning that when it comes to post players, what does life look like when football and you kind of part ways? We've seen Jason Kelce do it today. He announced his retirement with a room full of people cutting onions and crying all over the place. And when you leave UCLA and you go on to play in the NFL, when it comes to what that looks like from playing in the league for 5 years or 6 years, 10 years, however long you're in the NFL, the NFL could utilize someone with your skill set, as diverse as it is, as well-spoken and well-versed as you are, in order to help not only players understand what that means once they retire, but how well they can be educated by having the most up-to-date, current, accurate, and timely information possible, so they can make better decisions upon their decision to retire, or investments, or anything that would help kind of extend their shelf life, if you will, post NFL.
Yeah.
I think you'd be very well suited to do something like that once you retire from the National Football League. That's just my opinion, just based on conversing with you, and obviously seeing all the wonderful things that you're really a part of, and what you're currently doing right now to educate yourself in ways that I've never heard any athlete, and like I said, I've interviewed plenty of them, partake in order to extend their life, to extend their knowledge, their skill base, and being able to really speak to the credit of what the realities are throughout life in general, from college into the NFL and everything in between.
Well, I appreciate that, Rudy. I mean, I think if my perspective and expertise is valuable to the NFL, yeah, I would love to, find a way to give back to athletes, whether it be in the NFL, collegiate, high school space, or younger. I take pride that I chose UCLA because of the folks who have changed culture and pushed culture forward. And I think a big part of that is paying it forward for those coming after you. And I recognize how blessed I am to have the opportunities that I have now. And I recognize that there's been people who've sacrificed for me to have the opportunity to even learn through NIL. And I think going into this last year, as revenue share is here upon us, it'll be another learning curve for everyone, including myself. And I'm excited for it. I think we're in an age where college athletics as a business and as an economy are being legitimized. And I think going forward, as long as college athletes continue to learn through experience and put themselves in the best positions and lean on expertise with folks who genuinely care about us, that will continue to build this economy, as far as the college athlete economy, in a way that maximizes output for everyone involved.
Sure. No, I completely agree with you. Back to football for half a second from the player's view. I know you've learned a whole lot. I mean, and it's an ongoing curve, right? We all learn lessons on a daily basis, whether it's personal or financial, or to just make yourself overall literate in the things that you're speaking on, the credible components in life that you may lean on at some point whenever you can do the pivot, right? When you can pivot out or pivot back in or whatever that actually looks like for you. Speaking of pivoting, you appeared in 3 games last year: North Carolina, Stanford, and Arizona State. Out of those games, was there any one team that maybe had given you a little bit of problem in regards to defensive looks, and trying to pivot out of their pressures and being able to read their defenses in a way that made you feel as though you did your absolute best and left it on the field for any one of those games for that matter?
Well, I mean, I think throughout my time at UCLA, Arizona State has always been a good game. We always go back and forth. They always play us tough. They always play both of the LA teams tough, and they always have a talented front. So I think, Godspeed to them going forward. I think at this point in the season, we're really focused on what's coming up, just because we have a brand new staff. Coach Foster, he's been here for a long time, and I think one of the best position coaches in the country as a running backs coach here at UCLA. And I'm excited for his tenure here as a head coach. And we just brought in, a world-class offensive coordinator in Eric Bieniemy. And I look forward to learning under that program going forward. This is my last year. I'm savoring it. I'm making sure that I'm leaving it all out there. This is my last year as a Bruin. So this is something I've always dreamed of as a child, and I'm making it happen. But, sadly, it's coming to a close. But, as a performer, I always look towards the finish line, and it's almost here, and I'm looking forward to finishing strong.
I do as well. You touched on Eric Bieniemy, and I want to just kind of discuss this for half a minute, only because Eric Bieniemy is a winning coach. I mean, bottom line, hands down, no holds barred, winning coach. I believe he got a raw deal out in Washington with the Commanders. Of course, both coaches are now gone. When I seen him play in Kansas City, my brother's a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan. When he was the quarterback coach, he worked with, Patrick Mahomes, obviously a 3-time winner. But when it comes to the overall clarity as to what he provides in the instruction and how he does it, I don't believe that UCLA reached out too terribly far to grab him, considering he'd already worked for UCLA years ago. I think the familiarity with the offense, the familiarity with the college as an assistant certainly helped him kind of redirect maybe where his passion led him to, and where he's led to now is UCLA. And I'm sure you'll have lots of conversations with Coach Bieniemy as time goes on. I remember him playing in the NFL. I'm not old, but more so as an actual coach, someone that I truly respect. A lot of conversations surrounding him not getting a head coaching position. That's a thing of the past, but I think he's more towards looking at the future as to what he can do, and then clearly be able to work with you hand in hand to get you to get to the next level, reach your potential in regards to what that looks like. And hopefully when you leave UCLA to head into the NFL draft, that you're able to remember the things that he had shown you, and perhaps find a team that has that kind of mentality, the working coach mentality, to help you propel in the National Football League.
Absolutely. God willing. I really appreciate those words. I'm huge on expertise. I'm huge on winners. And, Coach Bieniemy's done the things that I aspire to do in my career going forward. And I don't think anyone is somewhere by accident. So the fact that it is my last year, I have a head coach who I really respect and know personally, as well as an offensive coordinator through our short conversations that I believe in and I look forward to working with. And I think the stage is set. I just have to be ready to compete. And I think as a team, we just have to continue buying in on Coach Foster and what he can do and the way he believes in us. And come this fall, we'll be prepared.
I think you will too. Last but not least, number 11. How did that number come about?
I just always loved the number. I'm not really sure why. I grew up playing soccer, so I was always number 10 just because the best player is always number 10. That's just sort of a rule in soccer, especially if you play either midfield or forward. But I've always just liked 11. I like the way it looks, and eventually it just sort of suited me.
Fair enough. Well, you know what really suits you is to, because you won't obviously be a part of the Pac-12, but to win the conference is what you are striving for. It's what you're really pegging. And if you close your eyes and try to hit a dartboard, I think you're going to hit a bullseye this upcoming season. Lots of great teams out there. I make no mistake about that. I don't talk about that lightly because there are a lot of great teams, especially the Big Ten. But hey, Chase, I wish you the absolute best. Where can people reach out to you? Where can they go to gain your insight, your knowledge base, and just take part overall in what you're doing?
Yeah, I appreciate that. On Twitter and Instagram at ChaseQB11. I'm on LinkedIn, Chase Griffin. And make sure you check out the Athletes Bureau. It's my newsletter. We're housed on Substack, and it covers the economics and just the world of college athletics and the economic side of it from the athlete's perspective. We have great writers, great editors. We have a great polling service, and we look to make sure that college athletes and those who care about them are informed, educated, and able to advocate.
Advocate is huge. I advocate people to follow you, to pay attention to what you have going on, and moving forward, just to be a fan of what you're trying to accomplish between the literacy, between the lines on the football field, and just throughout the rest of your career, not only as a senior, but as you head into the NFL.
Thank you so much, Rudy. I really appreciate that. Thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chase. I appreciate it. Everybody can find the show on TheRudeDogShow.com. Find it on YouTube. Great interview, great conversation. Chase, thanks again. We will definitely talk soon.
Perfect. Go Bruins.
Have a great day. Thanks.